Okay, and we're off.
Right.
I'll take us quite gently and slowly across as it's quite...
Okay. So the flow at the moment, is that about standard or is it?
Yeah, so this is quite nice actually. It's not too bad. Obviously the worst thing is when a lorry or a car comes along.
Okay.
Because they can create quite a lot of waves, unfortunately.
I would expect, I mean, as we are now, that's going to be unlikely.
Yes, very unlikely.
Yeah.
Although we did have a couple of HGV and LGV vehicles get stranded. And so they actually had to have about 8 fire engines come out.
Wow.
And rescue the lorry, which was, yeah, quite exciting for the village. Everyone was like, oh, what's going on? If I could ask you just to put your knees down ever so slightly, like just, yeah, put your feet a bit further forward, that's it.
Is that all right?
Yeah, perfect, thank you. But I try and come out in my canoe whenever the weather's not too bad. Obviously less so in the winter. It's much more enjoyable in the summer.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm certainly not the only one. I see people coming down in their kayaks with their children, and we've got people with jet skis. So it is good. I personally like coming out for the wildlife and the animals. Especially when it floods, quite a lot of animals can get quite confused. So we do end up sometimes with seals and with otters in the area, which the dogs aren't fans of, but I like it. There we go. So now this is where we're obviously getting out to where it's a bit wider and you can feel the waves a bit more.
Absolutely.
It's okay, I'll keep us stable. Just try not to panic. But it is incredible. I mean, like seeing the fences, and obviously I usually drive past this.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I mean, I've driven
days.
through here a number of times. And as we were talking about earlier, I mean, because I've come from the Ely sort of Littleport side, and I mean, to get here is normally, what, 5 miles from Littleport? Whereas I've done about 25 today.
Yeah.
So...
my husband works towards Cambridge, so for him it usually takes him about 45 minutes to get to work, and while it's flooded it's well over an hour. I know a lot of people complain about it, but I do think it is like a really fun quirk of the village.
I can imagine being, well, I was about to say cut off. You're not really cut off, are you?
No, because we can still go north of the village.
Yeah.
So places like Wisbeach and March, it's really easy for us to get to. But yeah, obviously going south towards Ely or Cambridge, that's a lot more of a detour. But it also does make the village a lot quieter, which is also quite pleasant.
Actually, I noticed that coming in. Very little traffic.
Yeah. Although it does still attract visitors. Like I was saying, people come with their canoes, their kayaks, their jet skis sometime as well.
Oh, right.
And then it's really good for the pub, because obviously then the pub is getting some extra revenue, which they're missing out on whilst it's flooded. Although I have seen before, the Lamb and Flag pub has actually delivered by canoe before.
Yes, I've heard about that.
They've actually paddled over the river, and I also think there are some archive photos from back in the day when the postman used to deliver the packages and letters.
Yes, yeah, I saw that over Christmas. I think it was BBC footage, wasn't it? Or at least in their archive.
And I think it's obviously always like a debate in the village as to what can be done about it. Like, what about raising the road or putting in a temporary bridge? One of my favourite solutions to this problem is giving every villager of Welney some kind of boat so that everyone can have the opportunity to canoe across or kayak across. But they also used to have a farmer with a tractor.
Yes.
And he used to take people across as well. Everyone would be standing up on like the back bit, and he'd drive over for everyone.
Yeah, I've actually, that might be Ken, is it Ken Bridger you were talking about? Yes. Back in, I think it was 2020, pre-COVID. Well, not pre-COVID, but pre-lockdown. He was kind enough to bring me across with the Welney Flood Watch.
Oh, brilliant.
So I took some video then, but it wasn't at this level.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is the worst it's been since around 2008. We moved to Welney in 2017, and before we moved here, it hadn't been like flooded or closed for the past 3 years. So I think it really just like, and since we've lived here since 2017, it's closed every single winter for at least like 3-4 weeks, but sometimes up to 6 to 8 weeks. I think it really does like highlight obviously the climate crisis. Obviously this is a floodplain, it is supposed to flood, and they do it for the purpose of keeping other areas safe.
Of course.
But the fact that the amount it floods and for how long it's closed for, I think really does show evidence in terms of how much the climate around here is changing. Oh, I mean, just look at that roadside. It's barely even.
I was looking at the flow of the, I mean, effectively the waves that are coming across. I mean,
because it is tidal.
I mean, it really is quite extraordinary, and yet it's such a regular occurrence.
I don't think
we
we take it for granted for sure. I think it does just look absolutely stunning.
It's just the way it completely transforms the landscape.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't, if you were new to the area, you wouldn't necessarily think that there were fields.
No.
Under all of that.
Oh, I love it when people visit and I'm like, oh, there are usually cows on these fields, you know. And it's just amazing to be able to see nature from like a different perspective. That's the reason why I really love being able to go canoeing. It's because, like I say, I've driven this road so many times, but now to be able to see it from a boat, it does give you a different appreciation for it. And I mean, it's also just so good for the ecology here. I mean, we're so lucky to have the wetland centre. And it's so important for all of the ground nesting birds, all of the migratory birds, for the soil and the land.
Just how still it's become.
Yeah.
I feel so bad that you're doing all the work back there. I promise
honestly,
I will give you a hand back.
I usually just go out on my own or with me and my dog, so I'm quite used to being the only one paddling. I'm always really grateful as well to see how clean it is. Like in general, I think Welney is a really clean village. We've done occasional like community litter picks and things, but even when we've done those, there is barely anything to pick up. Whenever I'm going down the rivers, I really notice very little litter, and even if I do, I'll like take it home with me.
Something I've noticed actually is that through the Facebook page, Fenland on Film page, I'm a member of various sort of numerous groups across Facebook. And what I've noticed about Welney is that the community does seem to be very closely knit. Absolutely. It is such a lovely community. If ever because obviously we are remote, it's not ideal to live here if you don't have a car. But sometimes it happens that your car is in the garage. We're fortunate to have a garage in the village who are absolutely fantastic. But obviously if you're stuck without a car, it can be a little bit troublesome. I've never had to worry about getting a taxi because I know some kind of neighbour or someone will give me a lift without it being a concern, because they know that I equally will give them a lift when they need it as well. That's really good. But it's just to be able to feel comfortable enough just to be able to ask people so freely, like, oh, is anyone going to Ely? Can you give me a lift? And people always respond. It's so lovely. Everyone really always helps people out in this village. It's, I think it's something that's becoming more rare these days. In part, I think the technology that's supposed to bring us closer and make things more accessible is actually pushing us further apart. Yeah. But no, I just think this is such like, I tell everyone about this village. If it's not about the flooding and how amazing that looks, then it will be about the birds and the swans and the fact that we're outnumbered about 4 to 1 by swans in the winter.
We have kingfishers, like I mentioned, otters and seals as well. Like, the wildlife is just incredible. And then when all of this freezes over, it turns into an ice skating rink. And I just think that's just the most wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's incredibly versatile. I mean, yeah, it's very easy. I mean, for somebody I come through here semi-regularly, but it's very easy to kind of lose your bearings, for me anyway.
Yeah. Until you suddenly see the corner road sign, and you're like,
yes.
oh yeah, that's a bend that I'm used to taking.
Yep, I had a thought like that back there. I thought the road was going to go kind of off to the left,
yeah.
and then we actually, it went off to the right. And I suppose that's what catches drivers out, I mean, when they do try and come through this.
Yeah. I think it can be, really disorientating. And it's also, I just think it's just not worth the risk. Like, I can't believe how many people just go for it. Because
honestly, it amazes me, having sort of been following the Welney Floodwatch page, the number of cars that get stuck. I kind of understand some people think they'll chance it when it's a low level.
Yeah.
I can make allowances for that. But when it's clearly too deep.
When the signs are reading 80 centimetres on the road, what makes you think your car's going to be able to do that?
Yeah.
That's another funny thing they do in the village, is if you capture any photos of cars that have been abandoned or flooded, we have like a point system.
Right.
I think whoever has the most points at the end of the year gets a pint.
Oh, right, okay. Do you have like a wall of fame for, people that have got stuck kind of thing?
I think that's partly what the Welney Flood page probably started off as, was people posting these silly photos of people getting stuck with their cars. But that Welney Floodwatch page, they're absolute heroes. They really are.
Yeah, very, very dedicated.
Really dedicated.
They do, two updates a day at least.
And they're so considerate of things like weekends and bank holidays and people going back to work, and they've got their own lives.
Didn't they do updates on Christmas Day?
Yeah.
Just recently, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So they're brilliant. But it does just go to show, in my opinion, this is such a lovely little village. I think there's only like 400 of us in the entire village. Like, it is such a small village.
I might have to do some research on this, but Welney isn't the smallest village in the Fens, is it?
No, I don't think so. It's probably close though.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
But it did used to be much bigger. Like, from what I understand of the history of Welney, it used to be one of the villages that a lot of lorries and things used to stop off at on their way to King's Lynn, before places like the A10 and the A142 were built.
Right.
So people used to drive through Welney. So Welney used to have 7 or 8 pubs, multiple places to stay. But now we're just down to the Lamb and Flag.
I think back in the day there was always a pub next to the river. You didn't have to go far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's one of my favourite things to do in the summer, is to go out in my canoe with a couple of beers, just paddle down, enjoy the weather, sit back, have a drink, paddle home again.
So just to give people an idea of the geography of where we are right now, correct me if I'm wrong, so Downham Market is kind of to the left and behind us.
Yeah.
Then you've got Southerly, Little Port would be kind of that direction. This here obviously connects up with the river at Sutton Galt, which is that way.
Yep.
And behind us is Welney, of course. Yeah.
It also does it makes you appreciate how much further this road actually is, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because you don't really realise. That's why I said I didn't know how long it would take us to paddle all the way across.
So we're, so how far across are we now? About halfway?
Over halfway, I think. I think just after this corner is where we get to basically the other end.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, I can see the...
you can see a lorry.
I can see the ramp.
Yes.
Shall we call it? And how are you feeling? Are you feeling the burn?
No, this is quite nice. It's not usually until the day afterwards where I'm like, oh, why does my arm ache like that?
So I suppose really just to cover ourselves, obviously you're an experienced canoeist.
Yes, I am.
Somebody who is not experienced, would you suggest they come out with somebody who is?
Absolutely. It's also a requirement that you have a British Canoe Union's membership as well. It just kind of covers you in terms of what rivers you're allowed to be on and where you're allowed to paddle. But yes, I have been kayaking for more than 20 years. So yeah, a fair while. Quite experienced. I'm also a coach as well. I used to race nationally, so very comfortable on the water. But I definitely recommend if someone's coming out here for the first time, if you're not an experienced person, have someone alongside with you. This is a road. People will still attempt to drive across it, even though you can see it's basically a river at this point. But that's something you just have to be aware of as well. And it is tidal, of course, and not a lot of people are used to paddling on tidal waters, so there are waves, the weather can change. It's just worth being aware of. Doesn't mean it's not fun though.
So, I mean, for example, how deep is the water sort of where we are at the moment, would you reckon?
So I reckon here is probably about a metre. It's on this left side of us is the deeper side. So the side going away from Welney towards Littleport is the deeper side. So yeah, I would say we'd be able to stand up in it.
Okay.
But it would also be quite dirty water because obviously it's come off of roads and farmlands. So it's not going to be the most pleasant experience for you to swim in it.
No.
Oh, you know what? We might get some points, you know.
I was going to say, that looks like it's somewhat submerged.
Abandoned, yeah. That's something fun for you to get on film.
Is there still a... yeah, that looks stuck all right. Is there still a car abandoned near here?
No, they all got taken away when it was a little bit lower, just before New Year. But that's the other issue as well, is it's not worth risking, you know, fire engines coming out if they're just going to get stranded too. So at some point they just have to wait for the waters to go down.
Oh, I see.
And because people have ignored the road closed signs, they're also not entitled to their insurance. So it means you'll have to pay for any rescue.
It reinforces that it's just not worth it.
It's just not worth it.
Really not. Well, it's really strong coming across from the left.
Yeah, it is.
Feel free to turn around here if you feel it'll be better.
That's all right. I figured we can get up to where the... Ooh, okay, maybe. That was a bigger wave than I anticipated.
I suppose once we're past this little open bit, then
yeah,
it does seem to be milder up there.
it's all right. We'll go for it. There's someone in there.
You know what, I was looking back there, I was trying to decide that. It does look as though there might be somebody possibly asleep. Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit awkward. He's done a proper job on that.
Oh yes.
And given that the water level upstream is, well, at the moment, it's just contending for highest ever, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about 3 centimetres short of the record.
Well, I know before the water has risen so much that it actually came up the bridge at Welney, and that's why over the summer the Environment Agency have installed new flood barriers. Oh, there we go.
Well, so here we are then. This is Suspension Bridge, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep.
The other side.
Right.
Brilliant, I'll turn this around.
Excellent. All right, well, for the video, we'll probably end it there, and I will give you a hand to go back.
Gives you a good indication of how deep it is though.
Mm.
Are you okay?
You okay in there?
Can we get you in? Are you okay? Okay, good. Okay. Ooh. The other thing people obviously have to be careful for around here is all the debris and stuff. I mean, even ahead you can see that concrete post. And you can imagine someone not paying attention will go straight into it.
At this level, I mean, it's so difficult to know,
what's
at least
underneath.
for me, where the edge of the road is. Right, I will end the video there, but I mean, thank you so much for bringing me across. I mean, it's been great.
Oh, I'm really glad that you've enjoyed it. Thank you for letting me take you out and share my love of Welney.
You have to start giving guided tours.
Yeah,
to
I
people.
know.